Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Standards, Learning, and Accountability Committee meeting this morning. It is 9:39 a.m., and I would like to call this meeting to order. It is my observation that we not only have a quorum, but we have perfect attendance. Would like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us this morning. It is my understanding that we do have a member of the news media with us this morning, Mr. Chris Joseph from WIS Television. Good morning. Welcome to being here with us, and thank you for your interest in the work of the State Department of Education. Committee members, are there any objections to approving the minutes as presented? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. I would like to receive a motion to amend the agenda. May I have a motion to amend the agenda?
Motion to amend.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we will amend our agenda to having for information will be first. The review panel nominee recommendations 02 will be second, and our personal finance, which is listed as SLA 01, will be our third presentation. Okay. And we would like to say good morning to, I think it's Lala Toll Mansaga, who will be presenting to us this morning, teacher as researcher professional development for short cycle process improvement. She will be presenting this as information. She and maybe Danielle Rawye, Director of Research and Data Analysis in the Superintendent's Division, and Ms. Monsaga is from the Office of Education Effectiveness and Leadership Development Division of College and Career Readiness. Good morning. So glad to have you all with us this morning.
Teachers Researcher is the name of a program that was developed in early 70s around action research, and then Teachers Researcher was the name of a program, a book that was written in the early 70s, but picked up by Marzano Research as a methodology for incorporating short cycle intervention in classroom and actually measuring the impact of this. So it's an action research-based project that we took and are trying to implement statewide with teachers so that they can reflect on their strategies and actually have effective feedback measurement on the impact of those strategies. So it's from that frame that this was developed. So we've gotten two partners with it, Marzano Research, who's done Okay. I get nervous and I don't talk loud, so I'll actually put on my teacher voice and pretend that I'm more confident than I am right now, okay? So we engaged with two partners, Education Analytics and Marzano Research. So this project has had two components to it. One is bringing research-based strategies into the classroom in an accessible way. And the other one is to take some of the administrative burden of doing research by incorporating technology. So the idea is to help teachers have an ongoing strategies for developing their skills and being more effective in the classroom, and actually collecting the research to measure the impact of what we're providing as a professional resource. So literally short cycle interventions in the classroom, where we can measure the output. So teacher is, it's sourced from What Works Clearinghouse. They took the strategies from NCES's What Works Clearinghouse. Marzano rewrote them in a more accessible language and put levels of evidence on it, and really focused on providing specific strategies for implementation. It's around quasi-experimental design, so usually there's a control group and an experimental group that allows a comparison to say, here's what happened when you didn't use the strategy, here's what happened when you did. So, and then we walk teachers through a four-step process in order for them to learn how to implement the professional development.
I snuck up behind you.
did.
So one of the reasons that our office is so excited to join this work is because the intended outcomes are exactly aligned with the professional development that our office does around trying to grow great teachers, retain great principals. And if we start with those midterm outcomes, I think anyone who's doing professional learning right now, this is what we're aiming for. We want teachers to stay and good teachers to keep getting better in their instructional practice. What I'm so excited about with Marzano Research's process is that those short-term outcomes are really going to grow teachers' skills as teacher leaders. They're learning about instructional improvement. It's a very easy way for them to test out what works and what doesn't in a pretty short time frame that isn't overburdensome. It's not like they're doing their own dissertation. They have some help to do it. And so as a result, what we hope to see in the short term is that they feel more efficacious and that they feel more enthusiastic and empowered, and that causes them to stay. Another unique part of this is the instructional design. It's 6 2-hour sessions, so it's 12 hours of work together with the Marzano team. But within that time, teachers have the chance to actually try an improvement cycle twice. So go in, try that instructional practice, talk to some other practitioners about it, see if it works, and then go in and try it again. And then, of course, the technology that Dan is talking about with educational analytics, they have this one-stop shop where they can go and test out their studies, but also have access to all of the research that other South Carolina teachers have conducted about what works, as well as those What Works Clearinghouse strategies. So Dan's going to talk you a little bit through what does that cycle look like with teachers.
Where we are so far is that we have done all of the ELA components for that were on the What Works Clearinghouse and all of the math strategies. And we rolled it out using mathematics in fall of last year, not the 22-23, but the 21-22 year. And then that was math only. This year, this year, as of January, we are full math and ELA. We've gone through about 160 teachers this year in 32 schools and 17 school districts. So this is an invitation process. We've contacted district leaders and said, we're not imposing this, but we're making it available and would like you guys to participate and incorporate it into your strategic professional development. So we have a contract and we're seeking additional people to participate in the research next year. So selecting an instructional strategy, we've gone through and aligned all of the strategies to both the instructional strategies, the teacher strategies, and the content areas. So if you know that you need help teaching fractions, or you feel that fractions is an area that you want, you say, here is the math standard I want to focus on. The website says, pulls up all of the strategies that are aligned to teaching fractions, and then you can go through and select which strategy you want to try. So it's not being imposed on the teacher, it's designed to create some agency and interest on their part and provide the availability of the research. So the teacher goes through and says, here's where I want to improve, or perhaps working with their administrator, they have a teaching strategy that the administrator suggests that might benefit. But both of those things are aligned and made available on the website. Here's just a quick view. I don't want to get boring on you, but I get a little nerdy on this stuff. You'll see that the SC teacher standards are listed with the planning and all of the identifiers that teachers are used to, and then the learning standards are set up to correspond to them. Now, it's broken down by grade level, content area, and the name of the strategy. And then over on the right, you'll see the level of evidence. When you're doing What Works Clearinghouse, there's actually multiple criteria. They'll say it's a good design. It's good design, but nobody's done it yet. They'll say this is something that's tried and true and the evidence is strong. But it's broken down across many categories. So we had Marzano go through and say, look, let's make this simple, right? We want evidence-based practices and we want people to make judgments based on the level of evidence. So they broke it down and said, look, minimal, moderate, or high evidence that it's effective. And the teacher can look at the strategies and do it, make that choice. You'll see the other two things that's designed for teachers to put some feedback, right? There is literally a measure of how effective was this strategy in your classroom, and then would you recommend other teachers adopt this strategy? So it's a way for teachers to provide feedback on the strategies that they're using in their classroom and communicate with other South Carolina teachers. That Learn More button actually takes them to the rewritten methodology inside of the website. As we move on to, after you go through and pick, right, then you move on to implementing that strategy. If you're a single classroom teacher, right, then you use a single group design, which says you do a pre-test, you teach without the strategy, you do a middle test, then you teach again with the strategy and do a final test, and then you compare the two what was the pre-post, and say what was the effect change. If you're a multi-classroom teacher, you can go through, try it in one class, look at pre-post in that one class, try it in the other class, look at pre-post in the experimental group, and measure the effect size. What we do is use the software to support that, so teachers aren't having to roster students and all that. It's all automatic. So here's an example of after you've chosen your strategy, you have to go through and think about how you're going to implement it and actually write out your plan so that you're going through the experiment process and looking at how those things impact the classroom. You're seeing an example of a particular teacher's plan about how to implement the strategy that they're going to be using. That next step is to say, all right, and this is a particular interest with Marzano. They actually review how to do standards-based assessment with the teachers as an embedded part of the professional learning. So here's how you pick out the particular standards. Here's how you make sure that your assessment questions are aligned to those standards in order to get a real measure of the impact of the strategy that you're choosing. So it reinforces two primary skills. One is how do you change strategies and be dynamic in the classroom and think about your practice. And the other one is building teacher knowledge and awareness of how to assess on a strategy, or on a standards level. So very, very methodical in the way that it's designed. But that leads them through a series of questions where they're very explicit about what it is that they're targeting, what the assessment questions are, and leads them to reflect that I've made sure that I've covered all of the objectives that I've thought about wanting to test in this strategy. Make sense? I can't tell if I'm going too fast or too slow or, all right. As I mentioned before, this is technology enabled. We don't want teachers to have to go through and rewrite class lists and do that. So it's automatically rostered from the student data system and provides the class list. The teacher chooses which class was going to be the comparison group, which class is going to be the experimental group. The software immediately brings over the roster that they want to do. And we're looking at how can we maybe use the scores directly from their grade books, but right now they do have to type in the scores. But it does a little check as soon as it goes in. Do you have baseline equivalents? Are you starting with two groups that are starting in the same position? And it does that check in the background using the software. So again, driving some of the validity of the experiment itself. So here's some of the reflections that teachers have said about going through this process. Whether it's, so both the quantitative, which are easier for us to measure, and here's some qualitative reflection on what they think they've accomplished by putting the strategy in place. So engaging both sides of the teaching, both the art and science, if you will. So again, here's a place where we can start to, we want teachers to reflect on the results of their strategy, right? If you found that the strategy wasn't effective, do you know why? Was it because of implementation failure? Or was it a bad strategy that wasn't aligned with what you're doing, right? Sometimes we learn more from our failures than we do from slight wins, right? And reflecting on both the success and the failure as part of the process really helps people improve their practice. Now, I don't know how many statisticians we have among us, but in the background, this actually does something that calls measures effect size and says if we look at the two groups, is the difference between the two groups significant enough to claim that the experiment was a success? All of that work is built into the software itself rather than being an extra process that we're asking the teacher to go through. So we want them to reflect on practice, not spend their time messing around inside of a spreadsheet and trying to do calculations. We broke it down so it's a very, very concrete response. In this case, we said that this is an intervention effect of 0.92, so it was a very positive effect, right? The confidence level is high, meaning not only do you have a good value that it was effective, but you can be confident that if you were to do the experiment again, you would get similar result. So that's the math part of it, right? And it's just given back out, and then you go through and collect notes as you reflect on what you did and whether you want to do it again or what you might do to do it better, right? So here are some of the reflections that teacher wrote after going through this process. Like I said, some teachers learn from failures, things that they feel that they could have done better, and other teachers were commented on the successes that they achieved. It's been a wonderful adventure as we've gotten people to engage in this process. But a part of being a researcher is not only doing the researcher is not only doing the study, the research itself, and doing the literature review, which we've simplified by making it available on the website, conducting the experiment, but offering an opportunity to share that results back is kind of the last step of that research process. So what we're looking at now is how do we transition to publishing your results or speaking about what you've done, what you've learned, and how do you share it with others. There is a public website, and I just, so not only do we have the application in the background, we've also created a public front to this website that makes it available to people who may or may not have gone through the training, but this is publicly available, so anybody in South Carolina would see strategies that are aligned to South Carolina content and South Carolina teaching strategies on the SC Strategy Clearinghouse. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I've got a few questions, actually. When the first type of study that you described was, more of a crossover study. And so unfortunately, those have their challenges. But you also, when you looked at the Group A versus Group B, so looking at your control group, how did we get to those two groups? I mean, so does the software do that? You measure the students beforehand, and the software suggests which should be in which group?
So the single group methodology is designed for teachers who only teach one section of a particular thing, whether it's the elementary school teacher who teaches one classroom all day, and they use the whole class both times. And
Right, that's
the
a
first
crossover,
time,
right.
a single group. In the dual group, the teacher has discretion. We populate the rosters,
Okay.
and they say, I'm going to use period 1 algebra versus period 4 algebra, and do the comparison. So it's a deliberate choice by the teacher which group they're going to implement the strategy with. We just go through and make sure that there's baseline equivalence between the two groups before the experiment starts.
And does this software have some sort of a way to control for variables? I mean, I saw one of the comments there was a variable that I suspect the software wouldn't have known about, the teacher's comment that, well, in my study group, I was, I had the last period of the day. They were worn out already. They couldn't pay attention. And so, yeah, it didn't work out the way we thought it would, but that was a variable that would not be controlled for.
So the software does control for dosage and the planned implementation strategies and when the assessments occur. That it would not be able to consider the time of day factor as it's currently designed, but it is designed as part of the reflection questions that were captured in that result. So no, we're not there yet. It would have been actually. In the next iteration of the software, we're looking at doing two things. One is, what does a principal as researcher look like? How do we look at whole grade level or whole school and mention a measure across to either behavior or other variables that aren't directly tested? And the other, and this one is going to take work, is how do you identify across multiple teachers implementing the same strategy to increase the N size, right? So especially with their single group model, you run into a lot of problems that the N size is so small to get a real effect size measure is a challenge. But the reflection and repetition should help us build those N counts up to get stronger evidence.
I'm interested in the implementation piece. Is it a train the trainer type thing? You're
It
training?
is not. Right now, it has all been direct instruction by Marzano Research.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
They train the individual teachers.
they train the individual teachers. Now, we've, some of the charter schools and a couple of the school districts have also sent their math and ELA coaches because they want to see about how they could promote the spread. I mean, most of this was done with ESSER dollars. So we're very cognizant of, I want to make sure that the software development is paid for so that the ongoing cost, the maintenance cost is within budget. But trying to get as much exposure with direct contact with Marzano while we have that money and can actually measure the impact of what we're doing.
Excuse me, I have a question. Hi. While I can absolutely see the value of this kind of research, I do have a concern, and so my question is, this third-party Marzano research, they're collecting data, and it sounds like, and please let me know if I'm not correct, that the teachers are uploading their roster to this software. Do the roster includes personal information about the students, and if so, or the results are tagged to the individuals that are listed? So who is keeping this data protected? Is there something set up so that this data is not, given to anyone else? How are we protecting not only the identity of the students, but also this information that's collected about how they learn and what they're bringing in?
It's a wonderful question, but Marzano has no access to either the rosters or the data that's being collected. That is entirely within the district operational data store. So congruent with this effort, we have been working with a group called EdFi, which is an interoperability standard, so that every district in South Carolina has access to an integrated data source that puts their student information system data, their IEP data, and their assessment data in one place that is controlled by the district, right? So it is a district-level implementation. And then, probably more weedy than you want to know, there's something called the District Data Governance Group that acts as a barrier between the district data store and the state data store, and make sure that I'm not reaching in and taking more information than I'm allowed to by reg or by law, right? So we have very prescribed duties in terms of monitoring and providing information to the legislature, but want to make sure that the districts have access to a rich data source so that they can do what they need to do for their students. So there's several layers of privacy protection, but Marzano has no direct access to the data. Education Analytics, as the managed service provider, has a data sharing, a non-disclosure agreement is what it's called, and they house the data, but it's encrypted at rest and it's encrypted in transport, so that we have a very, very secure system. That's something that the legislature has supported, moving to a hosted environment even for our student information system, because we were having a series of attacks, either a denial of service attacks or ransomware attacks that were happening at the district level. The legislature has provided funding for us to move that all to a hosted environment in separate buckets, if you will. So every district controls its own, and it's protected in a highly secure environment.
Thank you so much for that information.
Yeah.
Dan, just refresh my memory, because I saw the hypothetical effect size. When we're looking at this, what is a pronounced good effect size? What would that margin be? It's been a while since I've read Hattie's work, and I just,
So
that 0.92 looked to be incredibly impressive.
that 0.92 was an example, not an actual impact. So basically, anything 0.2 and under is kind of noise, right? As you start getting above 0.2, then you're starting to see effect that is considered reasonable, right? That it's worth pursuing. Problem is the first time somebody tries a strategy, they're not always the best at it. So you need kind of repetition in order to both hardwire the process, the strategy that the teacher is trying to implement, and to coalesce around a larger set of results to drive the effect size up, or at least our confidence in the effect. But yeah, 0.2 and below is kind of noise. And if you start seeing negative, less than negative 0.2, then you actually know that the strategy is not only not helping, but actually a detriment. So
I'm sorry, I
You're
didn't mean to
fine.
interrupt you. I was going to ask you, is the decision made for this type of thing at the district level? Are teachers presented this on their own, or does the district make that decision as to whether or not they participate in this?
right now, it's been offered at superintendent's and instructional leader level because we don't want to offer something that's either a distraction or a detriment to what districts are planning. There has been discussion about whether we allow, especially, allow is the wrong word, enable rural teachers where they might be the only algebra teacher in the district to become part of a network where they could do some support cross districts. But no, this is not being imposed on anybody. It is being extended as an opportunity. And right now it's not right now, it is at district discretion. That's,
Maybe take one or two more questions.
Yeah, I'm
getting no, it's good, it's good. Yes, sir.
Has this vendor been proven this system in any other state?
that's a mixed question. Marzano has done this in Nebraska and many other districts. We are the first at this scale in terms of the implementation, and the software was literally developed for and by South Carolina.
So is a experiment in Nebraska or wherever been long enough to determine that this is an effective approach?
The Marzano
Are they still are we partnering with them to help them improve their system?
So yes, yes, we are working together, and it was part of what we designed in this program, is we're actually doing a research study on the effect of the program itself in order to build a body of evidence to know that what we're doing works.
So the objective of this is to have a more scientific or objective way of determining effective procedures, classroom procedures and approaches for effective outcomes, better outcomes with the kids. And so if it proves itself and it's integrated, and these teachers are taught in schools of education how to use this before they ever get in the classroom, it becomes integral and can be a good way of objectively measuring and the effectiveness of the approach we take into teaching in any particular subject, in any particular school, in any particular district.
That is the hope, sir. Yeah, you could do an advertising campaign for us.
I'll make sure I understood it.
Oh, very well said. Thank you.
Is there any participation from the teachers' colleges with this?
I have not invited them yet. So that's,
If
we
they're
actually,
effective strategies, I would think that, they would want to pick that up and go, hey, this might be a better way to go.
the genesis of this, I actually applied for a research grant from the Department of Education, and I partnered with USC to see if they would be willing to vet the strategies that were being presented, and as an opportunity for them, their colleges of education, to have some of their research placed in an actionable outcome. That grant did not initially come through. It's horrible that it happened, that the pandemic happened, but the funding opportunity that it provided is allowed this, but we have not engaged with USC again around incorporating their strategies. That would be part of the future of the program, both in engaging with EPPs, educator preparation programs, so that this becomes part of the work, and then working with researchers in South Carolina about what works in South Carolina.
Thank you for your time. Our next step is to expand to a network of people who have gone through this, so they can continue working together and learning together and sharing those skills of action research with each other even after they do the initial training. So we're planning to start that up in June. It sounds like we should invite some of our educator preparation programs to that work. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rallier and Ms. Monsaga. Did we ask all the questions we wanted to ask? Okay, thank you so much for your information. Okay, at this time, as we amended our agenda, we are on item number 2. Our second item is approval for the 2023 Review Panel nominee recommendations. And Ms. Luther, Claire Luther, Instructional Materials Manager in the Office of Finance, will be our presenter this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all this morning?
Fine, thank you.
I'm here today to request the approval of the review panels for the items that were approved at the December 13th, 2022 board. And you have a list of the review panels. I had to give you a list today because the chemistry and physics and world history were not included on the list that you received on the one that was posted. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I would,
I have a question.
okay?
Okay, were all districts contacted, or were all of them supposed to be included?
All districts were contacted.
Okay, but not all are included.
That's correct.
Okay,
These were those that were given to me as those that were approved to be on the panels.
so I'm just throwing this out there.
Okay.
Maybe for some reason they didn't respond. You know, I have a personal reason.
Okay,
I've been checking my circuits, you know, but I'm just asking. I mean, I saw,
perfectly fine.
right,
Yes.
right. So chances are they just, for some reason, didn't respond to the request.
That's
Okay.
possible.
Okay, all right. No, I just have one school district that's not anywhere on here. And it's a school district, but they were newly unified. Don't worry,
I'll be glad to,
Clarendon School District. It's a
Okay.
newly unified school district, Clarendon County School District. I don't know if anybody saw anything concerning your area you might want to mention, but
I'll certainly check.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from Ms. Luther? Okay, thank you, Ms. Luther.
Okay?
We appreciate it. We now seek a motion to accept let me get this right, I'm so confused. Yeah, we now seek a motion to accept the information that we received, the report we received from Ms. Luther at this time.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the like signs? Okay, the motion carries. We appreciate you, Ms. Luther. Thank you. Okay. our first, which is our last. We're glad that you got here safely. The first reading of the approval of personal finance course standards, where students will receive 1/2 unit. Dr. Quincy Moore, who's the director of the Office of Career and Technology Education in the Division of College and Career Readiness, is our presenter this morning. Good morning, Dr. Moore.
Good morning, Chairman Frierson. So happy y'all accommodated me. Thank you very
We're
much.
glad you got here safe.
Thought it was at 10. That's my fault, so if I'm being honest. But it's so nice to see each of you today. I see some friendly faces in the crowd, and appreciate the committee taking the time to hear our presentation this morning. It is my pleasure to have with me Dr. Eleanor Glover Gladney, who is our team lead on the program side for the Career and Technical Education Student Transition Services team. And along with her is Dana Depew, our Ed Associate, who is over the Business, Finance, and Marketing cluster area and has been very instrumental in the work to bring to you today. So first of all, just to let you see kind of an overview of what I'm going to talk about today is really the key pieces in the presentation are around the legislation that dictates the contents of what this half unit is to be about, a little bit of the timeline of what we've been working on since this was passed last spring, a description of the committee that we used to actually write the standards from across the state, the key concepts that are in the half-unit course. There are 7 key concepts, and I can tell you that's clearly dictated by the pieces of legislation that drove this to come about. The field review and the revision process as a part of any time you implement standards, and the teacher credentials that will be allowed to teach this course. Just kind of some high-level things. And I also want to shout out to our standards and assessment team. Casey Prince Harvey helped us. We've been in the business of standards work a long time, but because ours are not tested, we've worked through this process within our own department, but this is the first time we've actually come before you. So starting first of all with the piece of legislation that drives this whole process, last spring, the Code 5939-100 is the piece that must change the graduation requirements. And at that time, it was determined that out of the 7 elective credits that a student has to have for their graduation units, that 1/2 unit out of the 7 electives would be deemed to be a personal finance course. And I don't know that anybody has been anything but ecstatic that we are now going to be offering this for the students in the state of South Carolina. It will begin with the 23-24 freshman class. And so there is a little bit of time still for folks to get prepared. But I think we're well ahead of the curve here as we're working through getting this ready to go by fall. So a couple of pieces on the timeline. I know you've had the opportunity to take a look at this, but we started, once the legislation was passed, started looking at what other states are doing. CCSSO recommended that we look at Virginia, so we had some meetings with Virginia. They've been doing this since 2008, so they already had a lot of things in place. And then Dana took some of the things that they had the materials and did a crosswalk with what was going to be required in South Carolina. And then we met with different stakeholder teams. At the time, Superintendent Spearman had a financial literacy kind of advisory group, so we met with them, took the contents of what we were looking at in front of them, got feedback from them. You know, some of you were on the state board when the Reg 43-234 began to come about, and that's the graduation requirement to say that 1/2 of the elective unit would be, in fact, personal finance. And then we convened a committee We reached out to career and technical education directors and asked for teachers to serve in this capacity. I reached out to the Instructional Leaders Roundtable and asked for teachers to serve. And we got a handful, and we sent it out on our listservs, but I'll tell you who was very instrumental is Chandler Jordan. Chandler is the program director for the South Carolina Council on Economic Education, and she works with teachers in this space, master teachers in the K-12 space. She supports them. So she and Dana developed a committee, and they began to work, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. And then as we move into 2023, we put the standards out for field review, 30-day requirement, got a lot of feedback from lots of different kinds of folks on the standards, but the committee did a really good job developing the content. And so certifications have been identified. We've been working with Mary Hipp's office, and you'll see in just a minute that is very widespread. We've tried to not limit that, but we've also talked about the training that will be needed if it's a first-time person that hadn't taught this before, but we're really trying not to pigeonhole folks and offer it in multiple opportunities. When I meet with the instructional leaders, I'm hearing that they may pair it with health, they may pair it with a soft skills course, because on a block schedule, you know, a half unit is hard. Some are looking at economics. I mean, there's lots of options that they're looking at to make this work because that is a local district decision. And so we made the revisions in March, and those are what you have seen. And now today, we're presenting this to you for first reading, and then we'll come back in May, hopefully, for a second reading. Training will begin this summer, but it will be ongoing. We offer an Education and Business Summit every summer in June, and lots of teachers attend that, as well as directors. So we will offer training for the very first time there as a start to work through to get anyone trained that would like to teach this course. And then we hope to jump it off in the fall, or it be a part of the offering for students. But I will tell you, our recommendation is that this be a junior or senior level course, just due to the complexity of what the content is. Can't make them put it at junior or senior level, but we have strongly recommended that because some of the content for a freshman, they may not have had some of those experiences. So here's a little makeup of our committee. They met in December over a 16-hour period, over 2 weeks, and we had 15 participants, but lots of different kinds of folks, if you'll see there, high school, middle school, business, finance, family and consumer science. Because back when we used to teach home ec, personal finance was a piece in that course. So we had a teacher there, we had a hospitality and tourism teacher, math, social studies, because social studies with the economics piece. We wanted to make sure that we got all of those different thoughts going into this course. And I'm very proud that we had a special education teacher on there as well to make sure we were thinking through those things. You see the makeup and the diversity of the group, and Dr. Glover Gladney and Dana were our two agency representatives who facilitated this work. And just a few more slides, just so you can kind of see some of the diversity on how we were represented. You see the different levels there from high school and middle. You see then from the different kinds of courses or the certification areas that were represented. A lot in business and finance, but lots of other different kinds of folks too. Here's our gender and race makeup. And then the section across the South Carolina. And I will tell you, we reached out, and these are the folks that opted to participate. You may not see your district represented, but we reached out and got who, you know, it's hard. teachers doing extra because it was after the workday. It was like from 4:30 to 6:30, so it was after the workday. And it was optional. Certainly didn't make anybody participate. So then the key concepts, and I'd like to read just to you really quick. I didn't put this in the PowerPoint, but I think the course description says it all. This 1/2 unit personal finance course fulfills the requirement for graduation credit. It's designed to help students develop skills to make informed financial decisions, manage financial resources, and plan for future financial success. Using experiential activities, students will learn the basic principles of personal finance and how to manage their money in a global economy, which include budgeting, banking, insurance, mortgages, savings, investments, inheritance, retirement, tax, and estate planning. Students will also learn about consumer protection laws, internet safety, and cybersecurity, enabling them to safeguard financial information against technology-based attacks. That's kind of a high-level description. And, you know, in 9 weeks, or in a semester course on a block schedule, 9 weeks, is chocked full of stuff. You heard the listings there. So those are some of the key concepts, and under each concept are indicators, anywhere from 7 to 10 or so indicators under each of those high-level concepts there. And then for our revisions on the field review that we did, the feedback, we very much did what Standards in Learning has done before and labeled the comments as a 1. 1 being that, you know, just might need maybe grammatically or just some clarity. 2 being that formatting, punctuation, those kinds of things was, or 1 maybe I should have said is not actionable. It was just, you know, a comment, somebody's opinion, if you would. 2, formatting, punctuation, and then 3, required committee consideration and decisions. So all of the feedback comments were provided to the writing committee, and then it was their work then to go and make the revisions. And so we have archived all of that information and have that as a matter of record. Here are the teacher qualifications, and there's a couple of notations. 1 is if there's a plus sign beside it, what that means then is we recommend that they receive some additional training if they have not taught the course before in those areas. GLC stands for really any teacher at the high school level. But we have asked that if that is the case, because depending on how, you know, and even semester to semester, as a former high school principal, you know, your courses change. And so you might have one teacher that's got a freed up schedule first semester, and you need to fill that with a different teacher second semester to teach this course. So that's what the plus sign means. And then the asterisk is that could be on somebody's certificate, but we no longer issue those certification areas. So we wanted to make sure, and we have presented this numerous times in different audiences, and folks are well aware, and I don't think we're running into any problems. I think trying to decide what to pair it with is the major decision. And so with that, I will certainly take any questions that you have or clarify anything for you concerning the first reading of the financial standards. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious as to what kind of prerequisite a student would have to have in order to be successful in such a short period of time on such an intensive topic.
So just as a former high school math teacher, what I would say is if they're a junior or senior level, then they've had some quality math credits going into the course to understand the complexity of what it is that we're talking about. And it's experiential, and it's hands-on. And so that is our hope. A 9th grader, I would worry. And I've heard some say we might prepare it with Freshman 101, and I've just tried to discourage and say, needs to be. And once they saw the standards and what was in it, I think most folks have decided to go that different route. So my hope would be that their math background would put them in a position, and if you're pairing it with economics, then there's the opportunity for the student to understand the content.
I think it would be beneficial if you had some kind of pre-assessment at the junior, let's say you're going to offer it junior and senior year. You had some kind of assessment at junior year, and if a student was not ready, if you didn't assess behind those skills, it gives you a year, that junior year, to work on getting those particular skills up so that they can take it when they get their senior year.
Okay? I like that suggestion.
How much training will be required?
Dana, the training, okay.
For the half-unit class, we designed the personal finance symposium at the summit. It's a different track for students, for teachers to come in, and they're going to be exposed to 1-hour sessions related to each of the 7 key concepts, where a master financial literacy teacher will be showing them how to teach the lesson, what kind of resources they are going to use. They're also going to be talking to vendors who will share with them the resources that they have on hand. We are also providing them the opportunity to become WISE Teacher Personal Finance Teacher Certification. And that plus is in addition to the PD, to achieve that WISE Financial Literacy Teacher Certification.
Teacher resources, that will be easy for them to have access to?
Oh, yes, ma'am. There's many resources that are free.
Kind of on an additional note, it's, I've been directed by Deputy Ferguson that this will be the first course in the lore that will be a complete package. So we're working on that. We're also working with South Carolina Virtual SC to have it as a virtual course. So we're trying to make sure we have everything ready by the fall.
I have a question.
ma'am.
I have a student, my son is going to be class of 2027, and so this will affect him. And I was just wondering, have you given guidance to the district as far as letting parents know that this is going to be part of the curriculum? I know for me I mean, obviously I know about it because I'm so involved in the department. But, you know, I think maybe if parents knew that this was coming down and that their kids are going to be learning about it, they could maybe talk to their children about finance and kind of get them up to speed so that when they do get there, they have some information that they learned at home.
So as one of the legs in our office, the Student Transition Services, is Anna Duvall. She's our team lead. She's our guidance counselor on that side of our house. And so we've sent correspondence out to the counselors at a high level, but once we get the standards and everything approved, we will then, you know, help them facilitate through our regional career specialists, through our counselor network, in as many avenues as we can, because the IGP process is really that time to have that conversation and say, you know, particularly with the student coming in as a 9th grade, you're going to have to take this. And we don't want them to get in a place where, you know, 2 years down the road, I didn't know. So we will do that through our counselor side of the house.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Some communication with math teachers at the different grade levels so that they could teach math concepts using a personal finance example might be helpful in preparing students to be able to understand and grasp material quicker.
Okay.
This is quite impressive reading the standards. You know, I wish I had something like that when I was in high school. But it does look like an awful lot to get in 9 weeks. Is there any concern that, you know, any of the teachers who were involved in this, did they have any concerns at all that, you know, wow, you got to be on your toes and this may be difficult to get done in 9 weeks?
So as one of we offer a whole unit in what we're now calling advanced personal finance in our CTE path, one of our completer pathways. And so these teachers, I think, they didn't show concern, but it's full. And what I've said is to directors and instructional leaders, please don't try to put soft skills inside of it or something else because it will not get done. So it's our job to give somewhat of a scope and sequence, if you will, or a pacing guide to help folks along the way, and we will do that as resources that we can provide.
Where's the training going to be done?
It will start at the summit, and then we've already got about 25 teachers signed up for the summit, and then we will begin to offer in different variety, could be a virtual option, different ways, but we will start this summer in June.
As well,
Sir?
in different locations?
Yes,
as
sir.
well? Okay.
Any, oh, go on, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Dr. Moore, you probably know this, but so much came from parents concerning this. Parents really brought this to, I would say, to the General Assembly. That's how this ended up. You heard a lot of that from parents. Unfortunately, parents should be teaching that, and we probably are, but parents realized how students needed a more advanced, especially before they graduating and that kind of thing.
Well, hats off to you, Representative Allison, and getting it, and the both sides of the houses over there to get it done, because no one is saying anything but yes. They're not unhappy, and I think, just knowing the kids that come out of college with the debt and the different kinds of things that they really don't know going in, so we hope that this is going to help.
Any others before I have my say? As a parent, on my second rodeo, I just wish that this had happened before now, because I have a senior, but I also have a 10th grader, rising junior, and I'm going to do everything I can to see that he gets this class before he graduates, even though it's not a graduation requirement. But it is necessary, and I'm sure the parents that know how to handle their finances are doing the best they can. But some of us who know how to handle our finances have young people, new millennials, who don't think we know anything. And so having a class like this is a blessing, and it's a half-unit class. And you're to be applauded for this. But there are some parents, they're as good as gold, and they're not as old as me, who may not know how to teach their children about personal finance. And so this is also a blessing. Hopefully, they'll sit with them when they have assignments or projects so that they too can be better with this, because this is an issue worldwide. Well, let's just say in America, where, handling your finances is a challenge, especially now with things doing, I'm looking for low gas prices, and lower, egg prices, but, just being funny. But thank you all for this opportunity. And I'm going to do everything I can to get that young man in this class before he marches in 2025. Thank you so much. Are there any other?
So, Dr. Moore, I might have missed, this will become a requirement as of,
The incoming freshmen in the fall, 23-24.
okay. That's what I was trying to. Thank you. I need to take it.
Any other comments?
Didn't hear that comment.
No, sir.
We didn't hear what she said.
Dana?
Yeah.
She, it was written two different ways, and it first was written as by 2027, but then we realized incoming freshmen, they may graduate before 4 years, so we are wording it as the incoming freshmen for 23-24
As a graduation requirement.
as a graduation requirement, yes, ma'am.
But
But
other
I didn't want to
students-
put a cap on it because they may graduate,
But it'll be offered.
December of 26.
Be offered to others before then.
It will, yes. It is to be offered in the fall of this year.
All right, if there are no other questions, we now seek a motion to approve item number 1 within our committee, which is item number 3, depending on how you look at it. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Chairman.
As we hurry to the next committee's meeting, do I have a motion to approve adding standards, learning, and accountability 1 and 2, personal finance course standards approval, first reading and 1/2 unit course, and 2023 review panel nominee recommendations to the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Items SLA 1 and SLA 2 will be added to the consent agenda. Is there any other business to come before this committee? Okay. If not, if there's no other business, we will adjourn, and thank you and have a wonderful morning.